So I just want to welcome everyone to our AMA on Mindset Over Hustle tonight. We have our guest here, Karl Jackson. And like I said in the introduction, a lot of the codes that we do, it's about learning how to code or learning how to be a designer or like challenges that people overcame in order to get to their dream career. The reason I asked Karl to come by is he's been practicing meditation, yoga. He's been a life coach, helping people get their mindset right. Because if you start thinking about the top athletes, right, the athletes who win the Super Bowl, the athletes who win the gold medals at the Olympics, a lot of them already practice a lot, right? So what differentiates the person who gets the gold medal and the person who doesn't? Because at that level, everyone comes in with the hustle, grind, everyone is doing badly, but ultimately it comes to the mindset that differentiates the ones that win and the ones that don't. And today I wanted to specifically introduce you to Karl because he knows what it was like to be in a career that he didn't enjoy. Previously, Karl actually worked as a stock trader on Wall Street, and eventually he realized that it's not something he wanted to do. It's not something that was challenging him, and so he ended up giving up his six-figure plus career as a stock trader, and he decided to answer his personal calling and pursue a deeper purpose. And so he started to he started to seek out coaches and mentors, and he's going to introduce himself in a second. But today he's also not just helping people as a life coach, he's also founder of a young startup called Monarch Wine, and he'll tell you all about how he came to be. And so I'll ask him a few questions in the first 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up, and you'll be able to ask him questions as well. So just want to say welcome, Karl.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And Karl, can you give, so I told you a little bit about Career Karma, and a lot of people in Career Karma, they're doing something challenging. They're pretty much taking a leap of faith. They're figuring out how they're going to go how they're going to break into a tech career within a span of about 12 months to a year and a half. And so can you just share a little bit with people kind of where you come from? How did you become a life coach, and how did this all come together for you? Because you went through something similar that people are going through right now.
Yeah. Well, I've changed careers a couple times. I was a trader first, which was extremely high stress. I remember when I was a trader, I don't think I ever slept. I think I slept like 2 or 3 hours a day and a night. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to sustain that kind of career long term, but I don't think most people who are traders think that. But at the same time, I had this interest in meditation and consciousness and in figuring out essentially how to gain more control over myself and how I could direct my life differently if I decided to look at things a little bit differently than the average person. So I was a trader first, and then I was a consultant in healthcare as well. Ultimately, I realized that neither of those careers, which were very traditional, worked for me well. And so by that point, I had already been around 10 years into meditation. I had been around maybe 11 years into meditation. I had been around 4 or 5 years into Kundalini yoga, which is a very meditative kind of serious form of yoga. I had already studied under a good number of gurus, maybe, or whatever.
Karl, people are asking, can you get a little closer to the microphone? Yeah, and Karl, we're about to discuss the mindset, but what are some misconceptions about yoga or meditation or this notion of like mindset, mental health, all those things?
The misconception that I find is that those things alone are tools, but they're not enough. I think people think that if I meditate, it will be enough, but you have to be a little bit more conscious of what you're doing after you meditate. So do you get up, do you leave, are you able to meditate for 10, 15 minutes a day, which is great. It's a great start. But what do you do for the other 23 hours and 50 minutes of the day? If you go right back to whatever negative habit or whatever bad habit is causing you to become stressed out or creating your anxiety, then it doesn't really matter whether you're meditating or not.
Yeah. And so we have about 35 people now on the call, and a lot of them are, I guess, trying to figure out. So a lot of people are dealing with a lot of stress. They're also dealing with this like self-discovery aspect where they're just trying to see, is this something for them? So what advice do you have for people who are kind of trying to make room for the new, but at the same time, they want to hold on or they want to let go of the old? When it comes to what kind of the identity they identify with, which is associated with who they are, with their current job, with their families, and where they live.
Well, I'm assuming if they're in the program or if you're considering the program immediately, it excited you. The idea excites you, which is certainly like an indication that there's something there. So if you're immediately excited, then there's something there. Now that there's something there, now that there's an interest in going in that direction, you have to make room for this new habit. You need the energy to be able to get through the program. Everything, immediately when you get an inspiration, it runs through you like electricity, and it kind of makes you really happy. A lot of people become addicted to the idea of change instead of actually changing. Once you allow the idea of change to electrify you, to get you excited, you then are going to have this second day phase, this next phase where you're like, oh man, can I really do this? Am I able to actually do this? And now the problems are going to start spilling out. And this is where you really need the energy. This is where you really need the consciousness. You need to get whatever your old mindset was, whatever your old way of looking at things isn't going to help you create a new. So you have to start getting more energy in real time. You have to start getting more energy so you're able to deal with the new problems that you're gonna manifest as a result of your new desire. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In terms of some of the lessons that you've learned that help you overcome stress or get more awareness of how you're feeling, and tools that you would think people can use to control their personal emotions and anxiety levels. Can you share with our viewers tonight, like what are some of those things that they can start implementing post this call?
So once something does make you excited, so if you're in the program, thinking about going into the program, and you're excited about it, you're excited about how your future is going to look, once the problems do start coming out, and once your different fears start showing themselves, what you want to do is you want to write them down. And when you write them down, what you also want to write down is you want to get really specific about what will happen, what's the worst that can happen if you fail. And make yourself look at it, and you want to write it every day for 2 weeks and look at it. And that way, because if you're able to sit there and you're able to write down what your fears are, and you're able to look at it, you're getting really specific about what might happen. And now you might as well, you accept the worst that's going to happen. And it becomes a lot easier for you then to move forward. Because it's almost like on one level, you've already accepted, if I don't make it, my life looks like this, and that's that. But it's the fear it's running from fear that creates fear. You can't run from fear. You have to go straight through it. So if your fear is failure, which is most people's fear, most people are afraid of failure. They're afraid of fear. Then you have to, if you can absorb the idea of a fear, if you can absorb that and say, okay, this is my greatest fear, and this is the worst that it could be, and you look at it, you're going to notice that the fear has less power over you. And you're going to notice as a result, you also get more energy. You're going to start feeling really good about yourself. It's shocking how good you start to feel after a week of doing that.
Yeah. And I think some people listening, you could probably relate. In the beginning, you might be intimidated by code or learning how to code or how to do design. And then you actually might try it, and you might download the Grasshopper app, and you might start doing some coding exercises. And then you subconsciously may not even realize this, but your fears decrease the more successful you get at something that was this unknown before. And so we're gonna open it up for questions. But in terms of Karl, in terms of people's mindset, and everyone has that voice in their head that tells you, like, we're always harder on ourselves than we should be. What is the inner talk that you have with yourself when you're going through decision making, or when you're going through tough situations, and you kind of have to decide, do I do this or do I do that? What is some of that inner talk that you do inside of yourself to kind of get yourself out of that mindset?
I mean, it's a good question, because on one level, in actuality, I don't think most people would think it, but I'm a deeply fearful person. I think I struggle with more fear than most people, because I feel like I spend a lot of energy analyzing something, and if I don't go through it, then the fear kind of takes me over. What I've learned is to not fight the fear. What I've learned is to accept the fear. And if you can accept it, then you can have a choice as to whether or not you let you fail or succeed. Because if you could, if you know, you guys are in a situation where you've already accepted, okay, I'm going to go this path. You want to make the most of it. It becomes really, your life is really determined based on whether or not you figure out things that you're afraid of. If you let your fear determine your life, then you're not going to have a very good life. The quality of life that you have is not going to be great. When you get an inspiration to start a program or start something, and you say that you want to actually do it, and it gets difficult, life is about figuring out, I had a really hard time accepting this. I had a really hard time getting through it, and then getting a big belly full of power afterward, because you feel good about yourself afterward. That's actually what I believe is truly the nature of life. That's what it's about. That's what it's really all about. It's not about money. It's about being able to go for something, saying you're going to do it, and then knowing that you're able to make it in whatever situation you're in. So, with me, what I do immediately is I certainly do the writing down tactic that I talked about. But what I also do is I make sure that I'm not allowing negative things to infiltrate my mind. Like, I don't want negative things to talk to me. I don't want negative people to talk to me. I don't want negative television to talk to me. I don't want negative press to talk to me, because I know the nature of something that's negative is going to bring it. It's like a lower vibration than the transformation that I'm looking for. So if I have to start accepting all of this garbage, then I'm not going to have the energy to go to transform my life. So, those two things are pivotal. Like, meditation is great, or praying, whatever people want to do. You're able to do it 10, 15 minutes a day. That's great. But then afterward, are you remembering not to allow other people, or not to allow fear to take you over? You have to get familiar with yourself and feel, this person is negative. This thing I'm hearing right now is negative. It's entering my mind, and it's changing my mindset. And if I don't stop them, then the nature of their fear is going to predict my future. And that's those two things are really important.
Yeah. And I see there's a bunch of people now, there's a bunch of people asking questions, and they're kind of sharing, relating to it. There was a question that just came up. I think it was sent privately to me, but I think this is a very important topic. Karl, can you talk about what kind of environment we should be surrounding yourself with?
A part of this is knowing yourself and kind of knowing what excites you. So, for instance, what's really important to me is I have to have really good inspiring words around me. So for me, it's reading. I like to read a lot. I like to read complicated stuff. I think that that's kind of different than most people.
Mm-hmm.
It could be something as simple as making, as comedy for other people, just making sure that, immediately, instead of meditating, maybe you watch something that's lighthearted, but that makes you feel good. The key is, so in an environment, you want to make sure that everything is positioned toward your empowerment. So you want to wake up in the morning and not, something I know a lot of people do is they wake up in the morning, they look at the news immediately. Worst, terrible idea. You look at the news, as soon as you wake up in the morning, you look at the news, right? And you're saying to CNN, hey, CNN, please predict my future.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're doing. Because you're looking at the news and you're saying, the first 5 minutes to 30 minutes that you wake up in the morning, right, really do determine your day. And you're going to take that opportunity and you're going to give it to a news source which is meant to instill fear into you. Like, it's not something I would necessarily suggest. If you like books like I do, then put that near your bedstand. Read something positive in the morning. If you like listening to a certain podcast, if you like listening to Seymour, if you like listening to something positive, listen to it in the morning. If you like comedy in the morning, you want to laugh in the morning, then put something, then get that ready and get that YouTube video up. So that's what you see first thing in the morning. But a lot of it is about controlling the decisions you make, because those decisions, those small decisions really do determine the outcome of your life. Yeah.
What about the people in your life?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole other, look, this is something that you're going to have to decide yourselves how serious you want to take it. For me, I'm really careful about the people that I'm around, because I know in order for me to communicate with them, I'm going to have to relate to them, which means that we're going to have to be on the same vibe. If we're not on the same vibe, then we're not going to be able to talk. And that means if I'm positive and that's positive minded and that person's negative minded, you're going to have to go down in consciousness to relate to them. They're not going to come meet you. That's why certain people exhaust you. You'll be feeling good and you'll sit down with somebody, you'll talk to somebody, and then after a while, you'll realize that their negativity is chipping away at your positivity. And then after a little while, you start feeling not so great. It's because and normally they look a little bit better. It's almost, it's an optical illusion. It looks like they think, oh, I feel better because I've taken their energy. And you think you've given them energy. You haven't really given anything. Yeah. You've just disappointed yourself.
Yeah. What about that saying you told me a couple of days ago about the 9 people in your life?
Yeah. Yeah. There's Tony Robbins has this thing where he says, if you have 9 billionaires around you, you're going to be the 10th. If you have 9 people who want nothing in life, you're going to be the 10th. And on one end, it's simply because that has to be the case, because we're all people that are meant to connect with one another. We're souls meant to connect with one another. And of course, as a result, you can't resist the downward pull of all those negative people. It's just how it is. So that's why sometimes transformation means that you have to decide, I'm only going to be around the 1 or 2 positive people that I'm able to be around. And sometimes that means that you have to figure out, this person's positive in this capacity, this person's negative in another. So yeah, knowing that about yourself is really going to be a huge help as to whether or not you're able to get through the program easily, or it takes a lot more work.
Yeah. And to build up on what Karl is saying, I'm going to open it up for our community to ask Karl questions. What I would ask, so I know, Kelly, you asked the question in the comments, which kind of builds on top of what Karl is saying. Do you mind unmuting yourself and asking your question in front of everyone, just so people know what the question is? And I think it'll be a good segue to the AMA.
Are you talking about when I posted about like my family?
Yeah. So, because I mean, let's be real. Like, we all have parents,
Yeah,
we all have cousins, and sometimes it's your loved ones who want the best for you. They might have their own opinion on, right, what's best for you, and you might have your own opinion. But how do you? You asked the question. I don't want to take away your question. What was your question, Kelly?
well, it's like with me dealing with my family in ways it seems like they're holding me back in a way because like it's I have to dedicate a lot of time to school,
Uh-huh.
and they want me doing more stuff around the house.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's understandable, but in a way, it kind of takes away time that I could be using for other stuff. But it's also like me coming up with the plan for it. If it gets to the point where they decide they're going to kick me out for it, I have several other places that I can go for it in case that would happen. And if it would happen again, I have other places I can go yet too.
And that's essentially that's a good point. Also, I think a big part of not changing comes from feeling stuck. So you have to. Let me ask you this: when you mention your family, do you are they do you feel like you're resenting them because they feel that way, or what kind of emotion do you feel based on?
Well, I mean, sometimes, yeah, I'll admit I do feel frustrated about it,
Uh-huh.
but it's also I know that they're trying to look out for me,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes it's I have to understand it myself that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that trying to look out is a bit too much sometimes.
Let
But then
me ask,
again, with the kind of past,
you feel sure that you love them, right?
yeah,
They love you.
yeah,
They want the best for you, right?
yeah. At
Um,
least in their own opinion.
and they're right. And that's where you need to draw it off. Because if you get more specific on why on their feelings on a day-to-day basis, it's interesting. With people are who are easy to love, we could get really specific as to why, all the different reasons that we love them. And sometimes you'll have some people where you have in your life who you can get really specific about. Oh, I love this when they do this. And you should express that. But you don't want to get really specific about what frustrates you about people, because that becomes what you focus on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And then you start, that alone is disempowering, because we're literally we're built to love one another. We're built to accept one another for our weaknesses and our strengths. But when you really start controlling your mindset is when you can see people for their strengths and ignore their weaknesses. Because what that does is you're training yourself to do the same thing with yourself. The way you look at other people must always be the way you look at yourself. So if you look at weaknesses and focus on weaknesses in other people, then you're going to focus on weaknesses in yourself. It has to be that way, you know? So I would say, like, something that might really help you with dealing with them, and you're going to notice, I'm telling you, because this is how this is an old kind of a Zen trick. If you could start writing down specifically, start getting really specific about what you do like about them, what you love about them, and if you could just spend 5 or 10 minutes a day and write down, I really love this about this family member, I really love that about that family member, and you slowly get more specific about it, you're going to start to notice that they're going to change the way they look at you. They're going to be easier on you. Because naturally there's going to be less resistance in your relationship. They're going to stop trying to make you like them, because you're going to stop trying to make them see the way that you see things. It's how you could start directing your life that way. And that that's a huge thing. It's not focusing on what you don't like about people and focusing on what you do like about people. And it's incredible how people do change almost before your eyes as a result.
Thank you.
Yeah, Callie, thanks for asking the question. And
Yeah, thank you.
I also want to kind of reinforce this notion that this is a safe space. I don't think there's any person on this call who doesn't feel some anxiety when they're thinking about quitting their job and trying a new career, trying something that they've never done before. And this is a place for you to ask for advice, tactics. You might be going through like a personal situation that someone else on the call might be going through, and so I encourage you to ask your questions to Karl. Also, if it would be great if you can introduce yourself, maybe mention like a 20-30 second overview of like who you are, like, and then ask any questions to Karl.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Hi,
Karl. My name's Azania. I'm similar in the sense that I don't like the career I'm in right now and interested in transitioning. And I was wondering if you had any specific meditation exercises for either energizing yourself or focusing the mind.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think I'm not really one that's a huge fan of like a lot of the apps that people use to meditate, although I think that that's fine. I think what helps for me is if you, I used to do really traditional forms of meditation where you're sitting like on a hard floor and you're sitting there for a long period of time. I don't really think that's necessary for the average person. I think if you're able to sit in a quiet, muted room and you could just practice not letting thoughts run through your head and just sit in a quiet room. Sometimes even some music might help. For some people, they like to listen to music while they meditate. I think that that's fine. Essentially, all you want to do is you want to teach yourself that you're not in a position, you can control at least 10 minutes of your day. Because most people are constantly like, we're constantly in this like victim mentality where we think we're being controlled by the world outside of us, by our jobs, right? By the government, by news. And it's like we constantly feel invaded. And so many people are suffering from anxiety, or so many people are suffering from depression, or so many people feel stuck in their situation because they're constantly being attuned by their environment. Mm-hmm. Their job is controlling them. Everything's controlling them. They turn on TV. A lot of people, they feel like politics is weighing on them. And it's like this pressure that they have because they feel as though every power is all outside of them. In the beginning, if you could just go, look, for 10 or 15 minutes a day, I'm taking control of those 10 or 15 minutes. For 10 or 15 minutes a day, I don't care if anything short of a nuclear attack happens. Don't bother me. Mm-hmm. You turn your phone off, you turn your computer off, and you turn everything off. If you're able to do that, you're going to notice that you start getting more power in your life because you're controlling, at least for 10 or 15 minutes, what's happening. You're going to realize that slowly, naturally, that 10 or 15 minutes is going to turn to an hour, mm-hmm. and it's going to turn a little bit longer. But also on top of a meditation practice, if I were trying to change careers, if you could get specific as to what you appreciate about your current career, even if you don't like it, if you're able to get really specific about what you appreciate about it, then you're going to notice that you're going to get more answers than if you feel like it's controlling you. Because appreciation opens you up. It opens your energy up. It mm-hmm. opens you up to new ideas. Feeling stuck doesn't result in freedom. Mm-hmm. Freedom results in freedom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, thanks for asking the question. And
yeah, great question.
I also think that even if it only takes you 10 minutes a day, the way to succeed on this journey is to build discipline, right? And when we say discipline, it's not, I don't mean discipline like you're coding for 30 minutes a day, right? You could be just drinking a glass of water every day, right? And something that's easy to do, but you decided for yourself that that's something you're going to do daily, and you just start doing it, right? And then you can add on additional things to it. But the key there is that now you set a goal and you're doing it. It could be making your bed every day. And then slowly you start accumulating other things. For me personally, when I was learning how to code, around the same time, I also started working out and going to the gym. And even though those two are not related, just getting over the hump and like getting over the discipline of going to the gym 3 to 4 times a week got me into the mode of like creating more time for things that were also important to me, like doing coding challenges. And Karl, I know a couple of days ago you were mentioning how when you first begin to meditate, your mind is telling you to give up. It's making you feel like you're uncomfortable, and then at the end of the retreat, you might feel like, oh, like I can do this now. So can you explain to people how, like, the kind of the cycle that your mind goes through, where it's constantly battling with your body, and how people can get control of that?
Yeah, and I definitely, I agree. If you try too much to change your life too much immediately, it's almost like you're creating resistance, because it's like the body can't handle all that change all at once. And
yeah, can I just, and I noticed that like I started doing what you were doing, where I would just do like one thing every day and I was able to do it. And then I started getting this huge pushback, and it was like even the simplest thing I couldn't do anymore. So I don't know if I was just trying to stack too many new habits on at once, and I should have just like stuck with like one habit per month, and then like built from there.
Was it physical? Was it like mental? Was it people around you?
Well, no, definitely not. Like there's this thing called savers where it's like do a minute of silence, a minute of affirmations, a minute of visualization, a minute of reading, and a minute of scribing. Do it every minute. You have 6 minutes. So if you don't have any time for anything else, you can at least do that. So I was doing that every morning, and it was simple.
Yep.
And so then I started trying to add like additional things on, but then it was like all of a sudden, even the simplest thing of doing the savers in the morning, I didn't want to do. Like I couldn't, it was like so hard to do. And I don't know if that was because I tried to start studying, because I'm in a boot camp now. I tried to start studying 4 hours a day in the morning, and that was like the number one priority. So I don't know if I was just so focused on making sure I did that like everything else kind of fell to the wayside. I don't know what it was.
There's something that we're all kind of hiding to a degree, and that's the fact that we all have the power to direct our lives. And I think our greatest source of fear is our power. Our greatest source of fear isn't actually other people taking control of our lives. It's our power. And it's because we're born free. And then our society, just by the nature, our parents teach us certain rules just from being children. We have to learn certain rules. We have to be in certain systems. And then as an adult, you have to kind of unravel that. And the same way you weren't brought, the system didn't take right away, right? Little kids are pretty rambunctious and like do what they want, right? It's the same thing with everything else. You can't take control of your life right away when you've been in a system that long. Even if, it's like it's just the way it is. So I think, when you were doing it slowly, that really is the way to do it. I think, I know with people who are serious meditators, if you do a lot of Zen meditation or something, there's something called Zen fever, where you literally will get sick from that much consciousness, from like that much awareness. You have, that's a very extreme example, but you have to look at it from the standpoint of, you guys have made a decision to change your lives. You've made the decision to change which is in and of itself a huge deal. And then on top of it, you have to be realistic with how, you have to prepare yourself by saying, okay, I'm going to take this slowly, and I'm going to make sure that I accomplish what I can, but I'm not going to try to overdo it. What was your question though?
let me also add, and I'll re-ask you the question. What I would also ask you is, like, so you were doing that for 6 minutes a day, and then did you try to like go add another thing to those 6 minutes, or you try to build another habit maybe later in the day? Like, does that
Well, so basically, I knew that I was most productive in the morning, and because I work part-time, I wanted to make sure I was getting my 4 hours in. So I felt like I had to do the 4 hours first thing in the morning. So I guess the answer is I tried to add something onto that, something huge onto it.
Yeah, and I think what you can try to do is like almost like separate as you're building habits. Instead of trying to like do one habit, let's say I want to learn how to play the piano, but I also want to learn how to code. I would try to create first I would create a stable habit of playing the piano to the point where my mind initially might dread the moment of like sitting in front of a piano, but then I would get good enough to the point where I want to actually play something. And then I would start adding on another habit. And I would do it at a different time, because I think a lot of the time what happens is we all have busy lives. And if you allocated 5 minutes of your day, that's great. But now you're adding on an hour to this 5-minute habit, and it might be just too much to do back to back, So
yeah, thank you.
You can try experimenting like that. Karl, my question to you was this battle that our mind goes fights with our body. So one example is we all know that like eating a certain way is good for us, right? But then we get a craving, and then our body picks up that box of Cheez-Its, and then we start eating it. So can you describe, like, when you start doing meditation, you were mentioning how initially your body just tells you you can't do it, and it wants you to stop, and the whole experience is like getting your body to getting control of your body. Can you explain that notion and how that applies to like building habits?
Sure. I mean, it's funny because you when you use that example, the first thing I think of is I used to not eat meat. I had an extremely strict diet for a long time. But I would, every once in a while, I would get like, my body would get this urge to like eat meat or to eat a pizza or something. Because it was almost like it was too much. It didn't, you know what I mean? It was too rigid. So you're constantly oscillating between resistance and openness. And when you're open, anything can happen. And when you're resisting, you're going to have a hard time having anything happen. The nature of your mind is that it's to a degree going to tell you when you've pushed yourself too much. Some people start to get tired. You know what I mean? Other people, they literally they get a headache. I think that for myself, the advice that I would give you guys, as far as trying to accept your moment by moment limitations, is to create a list of goals, not create an ambitious list, but not one that is going to be too strenuous in the beginning. And then check off things along the way. Like, if it's a small goal, it only takes you a couple of minutes, check it off. You're going to notice how good it feels to just check off something off of a list that's been weighing on you or something. If you've got this long list, just the process of looking at it and checking it off, it returns energy. It gives you energy. And a lot, you want to do things you want to accomplish things in a way where you're acknowledging that you're doing the best you possibly can, and then let it go. But so many people, there's this habit of taking everything so seriously and of not allowing kind of the unpredictable to come into your life. And I think that creates its own form of resistance, its own issue.
Yeah. Let's see. We have about 20 minutes left. We have now 44 people on the call. I think just by the action of you staying on this call, you're also building discipline, because you could have been doing other things like reading the news, right? But you're investing in yourself. I think there's a few people who have a question. Feel free to unmute yourself and just ask the question. Just introduce yourself and share maybe like how long you've been with Career Karma and kind of what you're trying to work on.
Hey, hi, this is Nitin Patel here.
Hi, Nitin.
Yeah, actually, it was a wonderful talk which you gave. And being an Indian, I'm very happy that everybody is talking about meditation. And it is like, definitely, it is a very great impact over the people. And I'm personally meditating from last 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
And it's very nice to hear from you that many people are electrified just by the change, thinking of a change, but electricity goes off when actually needs to be changed. So it's very nicely you put. And the question which I have is that you were mentioning about that every day energizing yourself, because everybody is different personality, everybody works differently, their mindset is different. So you were mentioning about finding out that things which energize you. How you yourself put yourself into that energetic position every day, because every day is different. So just wanted to know your thought process, how you do it.
How do you identify, you're saying, what feels good or what gives you energy?
Yes, like you, every day is different, so you energize differently. So how do you understand that, okay, today is the day and this is how I'm going to be in that energetic zone?
You know, that's a good question. It's interesting because in my opinion, in my experience with people, your natural state is to be energized. It's actually identifying what drains you of energy. And then you'll naturally become energized. If you can identify what drains you of energy, then you'll have more energy. If you chase what energizes you, there's a reason why Buddhists, right, meditate 15 hours a day, some of them, and still have all the energy in the world. It's because they keep a lot out.
Yes.
So it's to a degree, that's really the question, is you have to start familiarizing yourself really by acknowledging it. That's the key. I believe very much in knowing what disempowers you and what empowers you. And if you could identify what disempowers you, then what empowers you is just naturally going to keep on occurring, and it's going to become more intense. But that's the way I would do it. I would look at being around these particular people really make me feel bad. Being around these certain things really make me feel bad. Doing this really makes me feel bad. And the second you write that down, you want to start working on no longer doing that. And that becomes really energizing, because you realize, you know what, I put myself before this bad pattern, or this pattern that no longer works for me. And in actuality, we're all patterned. Our patterns run us. They control our lives. So if you want, you're all in a place now, in a great place where you're changing your patterns. If you want to change the old patterns that were disempowering to you, then you have to get really specific on what has to change, and then slowly start changing.
Oh, wonderful, Karl. Thank you so much for that answer.
Yeah. Thanks for asking the question. And Karl, one of the when I was announcing this AMA, one of the things I told people are going to learn from this is basically how to prepare for the moment when, and I think everyone hits this moment when they just feel like they want to give up, whether it's imposter syndrome, whether it's something that happens in your life that's unpredictable and you didn't even expect that will happen. So what advice do you have for people to, like, how do you cope with it, and how do you move on? How do you digest when something like this could happen to you? Because this could happen to everyone, right? And what is your opinion on how to prepare for that? Because once it happens and you don't have a plan, you're going to just react to it. And you're going to fall to just your emotion and reaction. So what is your advice on how to address it?
That's a really good question, because you're right. It's inevitable in life in general, right? But it's certainly going to be, it's inevitable in the program that you guys are in. As hard as it is, the first thing you need to do immediately is not try to get specific. the more you try, when something like really impacts you and it negatively impacts you, you can't in that place really understand what the problem really is. So immediately, what do you want to do? You want to remove yourself from the situation for like, even if it's an hour, even if it's a short amount of time. But the disappointment is not going to help you solve anything. So the first thing you need to do is say, okay, I'm going to remove myself from it for a short amount of time, and then do something that feels good. This is, again, when maybe you watch something that's like a comedy, maybe you focus on something in your life that's going well. You try to get more specific on that. And then from that clearer place, from a clearer head, now you can say, okay, how could I readjust? But you can't do that from a place of being low. You can't, if you're beating yourself up, you have to stop that momentum. That's energy. The energy is going in one direction. This is if you've got a lot of energy moving toward disempowerment, you can't become empowered from that energy, because it's any energy you add to it is just going to go further into disempowerment. So you have to cut it off and say, okay, this is what I need to prove to myself. I have control over my state again. I have control. And even if you take 10 or 15 minutes to meditate, or 10, 15 minutes or an hour to remove yourself from the situation, you leave it for a little while to show yourself the situation didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but I have at least enough control over myself that the situation didn't work out the way I want to. I'm not going to add to it by beating myself up. I'm going to remove myself from the situation for a little while. And then you re-enter it from a clearer head and from a place where, in actuality, you're now empowered, because you felt disempowered because the situation disappointed you. But immediately afterward, you said, I'm not going to stay in this place of disappointment. I'm going to remove myself for a short amount of time. And you're training yourself that in actuality, nothing really predicts your future. You determine your future. And that happens slowly. So yeah, immediately don't try to figure anything out while you're low. Try to figure out, remove yourself from it for at least a short amount of time, re-enter it, reconsider it afterward.
Yeah. So if someone is feeling, are you saying like if someone is feeling like they want to give up, just kind of walk away from coding or whatever's making you feel like you want to give up, and then an hour later or 2 hours later, come back to it thinking of like, okay, so what was that feeling before, or like, why did I feel it, or what should I do next? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you're removing yourself for a short amount of time to stop the momentum going the wrong direction. The key is, if you don't do something, if you remove yourself from it and you think about it for the next hour, it still has control over you. You have to do something that you actually want to do, that feels good to do, even if it is, that's why I'm saying, even if it's like a comedy or something, you remove yourself from it to stop the momentum. And in laughing alone, you're stopping momentum. You're changing the frequency of disappointment is really low. But if you could change it to the frequency of laughter, then you can also you could go one step or a little bit higher to resolution. You know what I mean? It's you're going in the right direction. But if you are if you are disappointed about something and then you stay there and you remain disappointed about it, you start becoming disappointed by the fact that you're allowing yourself to stay disappointed. And you keep on going lower and lower and lower. You're not going to solve anything. Yeah. So the key is stop, get yourself in the right headspace, get your energy in the right space, and then afterward, try to figure it out from that new perspective. Yeah. It's all about perspective. It's all about perception.
Can you elaborate a little bit on like this concept of like your own reality?
Yeah.
Karl and I had some conversations over the weekend, but you're saying how like reject the reality and then another reality will come by. Can you explain to people like what is reality, or what is the way you see it? Because there's a lot of like Tony Robbins talks a lot about like self-limiting beliefs, abundance, mindset, all those things. Can you explain to people like why is it important to control your own reality?
Well, this is something that I think if anyone who's interested or even somewhat interested in Buddhism or Zen might be a little bit more familiar with. You've got two very different kinds of people who study meditation seriously in Buddhism. Normally, you have the Bodhisattva, who is this person who actualizes this, who knows themselves. They realize who they are, and they're ready now to actualize a life. They realize who they are, and now they're able to create their reality, create their world around who they are and what their message is on this planet. You have the other end of, which is the Buddhist who goes off into the cave and disappears and no one ever sees him again. To a degree, we're all to a degree called to follow this kind of bodhisattva, this lineage, I think nowadays, where, you get inspiration, something comes into you, and you get an idea. This might be like an evidence of who I really am, what I really want. After that, it's your job to understand that you can't really mess this life up, because you're going to learn lessons from it anyway. You're going to learn, if you're all in this program and you're going to do your best to get through it. But what most people think is, I need to take my world and they need to take my life more seriously. They're actually taking their life too seriously. They're taking it so seriously that they're keeping themselves from being able to accomplish what they want and where they need to be more easily. And that's really the point of consciousness, of meditation in general. Because once you realize, maybe there's something going on here. Maybe I need to take a step back. Maybe I'm taking this too seriously. You start to realize, wow, there's all of this going on. There's this matrix that we're in where everyone is trying to get energy from me and I'm being drained. Eventually you realize I'm gonna flip the script, which is essentially what you guys are doing in your own way. You're saying, I'm rejecting this matrix reality that I was provided or I was given. And as a result, I'm gonna start creating my own reality. And as soon as you do that, you're going to get, your reality is going to start resisting it, because it wants to keep you in this proverbial matrix to a degree. So the people around you who are in the matrix don't want you to leave it. The job's not going to want you to leave it. You have to be your own source of inspiration. And then eventually, if you keep on going forward through certain steps, your new reality that you actually wanted does unfold. But it's all essentially a game. We're all we're entities. We're all experiencing a simulation to it.
That was definitely very deep. I think some people had questions. Kelly, do you have a question?
Like, one thing I've always kind of had to deal with was that me growing up, I was always the type at where if you told me I couldn't do something, I had to go do it. But like, in a way, it has kind of helped my life some, because like my dad telling me I would never graduate high school, and I ended up being the first person in my family to graduate high school. But like, is that like a good mindset to have possibly?
I think it's like the model mindset. Like what you're describing is, if everyone could do that and could practice that, then we'd have a lot less angry people. Because if you can experience pain, or you can be hurt by somebody, and afterward you can see why they came into your life, or you could even say, you know what, I'm done being angry at them, or I realize kind of why they were this way, and it helped me get further along. You're not keeping your energy back in the past. You have that energy. You literally, like, that's really what forgiveness is. Forgiveness comes from being hurt, right? And then saying, I'm not going to hold on to this pattern of being hurt. I'm not going to allow this one person who couldn't really treat me the way I think I wanted to be treated. I'm not going to allow that person, I'm not going to allow their negative behavior not determine my ability to see good in them. And if you can have that kind of control over your life, you're going to get everything you want. And that, yeah, I think that literally that's great. If you're able to do more of that, you're going to do great.
Yeah, it's just over time it kind of like wears you down because like you tired of constantly doing it.
Yeah.
Like
unless
that's what made the issue.
Unless you're able to do exactly what you're talking about, right? Where you say, "Hi, nice to I see." You're able to look at a parent, you're able to look at a friend, you're able to be hurt by somebody, and say, "You taught me something, and I appreciate that." And you focus on that aspect of them instead of the fact that they want to hurt you. That means that you do really create your reality, because somebody can do something wrong to you, do something bad to you, and you can not perceive it as being bad. That's powerful. That's power. That means that you can have a bad day in coding, right? And you can look at it, instead of saying this is a bad day in coding, you could look at it as a lesson. That means that there's no bad day for you. That means that you are going to really control your future.
It's just, for me, I kind of see it as like a driving mechanism to like push me forward to just do harder, because if I don't, who's going to do it for me?
Yeah,
exactly.
Kelly, I would also add, like, you're here today, right? You're here today because your past experiences brought you here, right? For me, like, my parents are immigrants, right? When I was in middle school, they came to the States with no money, and in the early days, we were on food stamps and welfare, and in the beginning, it kind of sucked being poor. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like, it sucked being poor, but then I used that as motivation for me to work harder, study harder, and I wouldn't be here today if everything was just given to me. And so everything that happened to us, it happens for a reason. And it sounds like you have found a way to just let go of that, like let go of the kind of this anger, and just turn it into, great, like, these people think I can't do it. Or when we applied to Y Combinator the first time and we got rejected, we took the letter, we put it on our wall, and we just kept going and applied the second time. We didn't let that prevent us from going forward, And so just embrace the challenges, embrace the haters, and just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the point you just brought up makes me think of something else too. There's two ways that people often try to empower themselves. It's one, when you were talking about the idea, okay, if the world tells me I am poor, right? You can either say, you could absorb that, right? And you could say, I'm poor and I'm going to become successful, right? And if you do that, you never really get the success, because it's like you chase it. Or you could say, you know what, there's a cross in the matrix here. Mm-hmm. Like, the world is telling me this, but I don't feel that way. I don't feel poor. So, if you're able to do that, then every step along the way becomes slowly more and more intoxicating, and you feel better and better about yourself slowly, because you realize, oh, my life is actually becoming a reflection of who I really am, opposed to what I'm not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was just something that.
Yeah. I know we're about to wrap up, but I know on every AMA, whenever we have guests, I always ask them about the imposter syndrome. And I know some of you have asked about the imposter syndrome in the chat. And so I think, especially with coding, I can think of a million reasons why someone could kind of prevent themselves and hold themselves back. Because today, society does tell us we need to go to college to get a degree. Society tells us that coding is hard, or you have to be good at math. And then when people start trying it, it's not easy, but nothing in life like playing football is not easy if you're just starting out. Everything is challenging. So it's natural for someone to feel like an imposter. So Karl, what advice do you have for people? And maybe you can start out by explaining how you view imposter syndrome and provide some advice for people who might be experiencing that.
Well, I would define an imposter as somebody whose life is a reflection of their fears, because that's what makes you an imposter. An imposter when your fear determines your future. And that's what slowly drains you, is the fact that you're having to wear this suit, that you think you have to wear this suit every day, that really is not a reflection of who you are. And in actuality, it's not realistic that we're able to switch that, at least not in most cases, switch it overnight, which is why, just like meditation, you slowly, just drop by drop, you get your control back of your life. What's not natural is for a human being to feel as though they have a desire, a calling in life that they really feel aligned with, and then to say, oh, I can't have that because of some sort of external factor. We're all animals. We're animals, meaning that we're all in nature, meaning that kind of, it's not natural for you to have an idea or have a desire that you feel deep within you that you can't accomplish. That's not natural. That's not normal. That you're supposed to be able to have a desire and work toward it. And you're supposed to be able to accept that the world, that nature is going to be on your side with that. That if you have to find certain information out, that person's going to come to you. And if you need if you need help, that you're going to be able to find that help. You know, if you don't have that kind of ability to accept that kind of faith, it does become much harder. And in my opinion, then you really are going to you're going to be posturing. You're going to be an imposter because you don't have faith in nature itself. So yeah, I hope I answered that correctly.
Definitely. Let's do one more question. Anyone have any last questions for Karl? Someone who hasn't asked the question yet?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Melanie.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, I'm on my phone tonight. I'm trying to get my old Mac to work, and so I have to use both the phone and the computer screen. But my question, I'd written it down in the chat, and I was just curious, Karl, if you had ever experienced the Kundalini and what your understanding of it is, and if it was a positive experience for you, because I've heard that it can be both positive and negative for people.
So are you referring to like an awakening symptoms?
Yeah, that was just something I read somewhere on one of the titles for the webinar here.
Yeah,
I thought maybe I didn't.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, because my experience with it, I think, is kind of is different than probably most people who do a lot of meditation, who I'm familiar with. But yeah. I had very for me, this is why I know what you want. To a degree, you have control over certain things, but desires or things that are in you, you have to pursue them.
Yeah.
Because I had a very clear, I was like spoken to very clearly through physical symptoms, really, that I had to reorganize my life. And to a degree, I'm sure on some level, even if you do absolutely no meditation or anything like that, a lot of people in this chat can relate to that. That it's almost like it's almost like their intuition is working against their body. There's something that starts to weigh on you. You're like, I really have to change something about my life, And for me, it was very physical. Other people, it's not as physical. But either way, it's all about aligning your energy. We're all so much more powerful than we actually acknowledge. And if you're able to get your desires in line with who you actually are, right? What you find over time. It takes time, but you slowly find it. But you find it by pursuing your dreams and pursuing ideas. You get your desire and your dreams in a line with one another. And it's almost like the physical aspect of your life takes care of itself. If I eat horribly, you know what I mean? I don't feel good like anybody else, but
same here. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But beforehand, I couldn't eat anything because there was so much of my energy was being used to keep an illusion alive, to posture, being an imposter. So I would say don't wait that long if anyone is experiencing that kind of situation.
Yeah. Can you, so far, I think everyone realizes that it's been a very insightful AMA. I see a lot of people in the chat saying that there's definitely a lot of replay value in this. So I'll definitely upload it after. Since we have Karl here, can you explain the importance for people to uncover what they're good at?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't know what they're good at. So what is the process for uncovering that? And why should people try to do that?
That's a great question. The way that I do it is probably a little more uncomfortable than what most people would like, but I think it is the most accurate way of doing it. You get really familiar with what you're good at by knowing what you're not good at, mm-hmm. which to me that's the nature of what you would call the shadow. Is I believe very much in the shadow and in light. It's more of a psychology term that they would normally use it. Shadow just being what you don't know about yourself. It doesn't mean anything. It's not about evil or anything like it. It means what do I not know about myself versus what I know about myself. What I know about myself is the light. What I don't know is the shadow. And it's about looking at it as, look, I really am bad at this. I'm not realistically going to really be good at it, and accepting it and looking at it. And what you're going to naturally just get is you're going to naturally see with everything that you're not good at, you're going to get a key to what you are good at. And you're going to see that those keys are, they're intrinsic to understanding how you're going to position your life so that you own your destiny correctly. Mm-hmm. But you have to, but yeah, the first thing that I would do is I would start pointing out, this really drains me of energy. It goes back to this really is draining me of energy. What if I want to flip it? How do I flip this around? That's a pretty important mm-hmm. thing for you to do. And to look at it, write it down, look at it, know that this is what disempowers me. I don't like doing this. How can I use this now that it disempowers me? Maybe I can't get rid of it right away. Maybe it's not something I'm ever supposed to get rid of it. But how can I accept this about myself? How can I say, okay, I have trouble sitting down and studying, and this is just who I am? Like, if that's who you are, then you have to absorb that first, because then you're going to find out, oh, there are all these different loopholes mm-hmm. that I can use to study that makes it a lot easier for me. I'm not really going to love it, but by accepting that I don't like it, accepting that I need a loophole, and accepting that I think differently than other people, it's almost like I'm forgiving myself for not being like other people. And as a result, you're going to free up a lot of energy because you're not beating yourself up in the shadow. You're acknowledging your power in the light.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're wrapping up the AMA. Karl, for anyone who is interested in reaching out to you or staying in touch, mm-hmm. what is the best way for them to connect?
You guys could reach me at my work email, which is Karl, K-A-R-L, at monarch.wine.
So that's it, right? Karl
at monarch.wine. Yep. That's it.
Yeah. And I would just want to give a shout out, especially to people on the East Coast, but also people on the West Coast who are still with us. Fallon, it's a journey. It's all about just getting more knowledge. And even if you only took certain tactics or certain things out of the skull, you're already winning, right? Because next time you might be feeling something, you might be feeling hurt, something might happen to you that you don't expect. Just try to implement and use some of the things that Karl shared. Take a step back, make yourself feel good, and then tackle it with a different mindset and just keep going. And it sounds like a lot of people did find it useful, so maybe we'll even have Karl return and do more of these AMAs. But let's give a big shout out to Karl. Thanks a lot, Karl.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you a lot.
Yeah. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, Karl.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Let's break in. Callie, thanks for asking questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a great night,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Take care.
Right. Thank you.
All right.
Bye, Annabelle.
Bye.
Bye.